All right. We're finally, I think we'll be done. Finally going to finish with Chapter 8, Section 1 on hypothesis testing. Okay. Right. So happy we're going to be done. I'm not even going to write the whole everything of it. I'm just going to say hypothesis. Yeah, that's it. All right. So this is just to make a note of it. This is the traditional method. We'll also be looking at the p-value method and the confidence interval method. And let's just go through step by step. Steps. Step number 1. We will state the hypotheses. State H subscript 0 and H subscript 1. The book says to identify the claim. That is not 100% necessary. It does help. It is useful to identify the claim. The claim is usually associated with the research hypothesis or the alternative hypothesis. That's another word for the alternative hypothesis we know is the research hypothesis. Then we're going to sketch the critical region and find the critical values. So sketch the critical region, and more than that, look up, find the critical values. Right? Well, I mean, the picture of the critical region is not, going to be the end-all, be-all. It's these critical values that are going to be the cutoff points for our test statistic. So that is the next thing, in fact, is to compute the test value, compute the test statistic. All right. Based on what our test statistic is and where that falls within our sketch of the critical region, what side of the critical value it is on, we're going to use that information in order to make the decision. So that's number 4, is we will make the decision and we are only going to decide to reject H subscript 0 or to not reject H subscript 0. That's it. That's the only thing. Make the decision to reject H subscript 0 or not reject H subscript 0. And then finally, step 5 is whatever decision we, for lack of a better word, decided in step 4, whether we decided to reject the null hypothesis or we failed to reject the null hypothesis. In Step 5, we're going to summarize the results. And we can, I'll just quickly summarize how to summarize the results. Oh, yeah, I knew that word looked suspicious when I first wrote it, but we'll easily repair that. Summarize the results. There we are. Okay, so a quick guideline on how to summarize the results is this. If you reject hang on 1 second. Okay, here's how to summarize the results. So in step number 4, you made the decision to either reject the null hypothesis or not reject the null hypothesis. If you reject the null hypothesis, you'll phrase your result, your response as follows. When we reject H subscript 0, we'll say, the evidence suggests, and then from there we'll fill in the blank with whatever we've stated in the alternative hypothesis. It is helpful here to have written down in step number 1 what your claim was, because that will help to summarize your alternative hypothesis in the language of the original problem, which, remember, for word problems, all of these are going to look like word problems. We are going to be employing Polya's method, where we're going to want to come up with a verbal answer to the question. All right, what happens in the instance where we make the decision to not reject the null hypothesis? Let's go over that. When we fail to reject, or we decide to not reject, whatever, the null hypothesis, we will say, there's not enough evidence to suggest, and then just like we did over here, we're going to go ahead and fill in the blank with whatever we had formulated for H subscript 1. Okay? We're not going to talk about the null hypothesis itself, even though that is what we're kind of settling for in this sense. So we'll move on from here into the next section to go over examples of putting traditional hypothesis testing into use. So we're finishing now with Chapter 8, Section 1.